Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to explore the informal performance management system, and we're going to look more precisely at continuous coaching and giving feedback. So without further ado, here is the agenda. First, I'm going to introduce myself, as always, very quickly. And then we'll dive right in. We'll dive into what is informal performance management. And then we'll talk about continuous coaching, the manager coach, and giving, receiving feedback. At the end of the webinar, the presentation part, I will stop the recording, and then there will be time for questions and answers. So here again, this is me. So my name is Marie-Claude and I work as a leadership coach, and I focus on middle managers, first-time leaders, aspiring leaders. And when I do coaching, I have lots of different packages where I use assessment tools, personality tools 360 to really help you grow in your role, get to that next career move, and so on. I also work with personal development with a focus on mental well-being and personal resilience. There's a slide at the end of the presentation with all my contact details. So that's me. Let's go on to the topic now of informal performance management. So this is the performance management life cycle, and today we're exploring this thing down there, which is all about continuous coaching. And when we talk about continuous coaching, we're talking about mentoring, we're talking about development conversation, we're talking about giving and receiving feedback. So the kind of leadership skills that you are actually developing when you're doing this well are, of course, coaching and giving feedback, but also developing others, developing emotional intelligence, developing interpersonal sensitivity, agility, and developing trust. Okay, so there's just some of the key leadership skills that you can develop by doing this well. So let's explore a little bit informal performance management. Informal performance management is the how. So within the past few webinars, we spoke a little bit about the what, and the what is the system that sits in the background. Yeah, it's the system. Usually, it's a computer system that tells you, you need to have your objectives in by that date. You need to conduct your media reviews by that date, and you need to do your annual reviews and your appraisal by that date, and you tick all the boxes. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations still view performance management as a tick in the box exercise. And this is not what performance management is all about. Performance management is all about the how. The how is everything that's informal, and it's all about, as I said before, coaching, developing people, giving, receiving feedback, mentoring, doing action learning, praise, recognition, and so on. And it's something that happens all year round, every single day, every time you have an opportunity. Okay, none of the how is written in your job description, and it takes a lot of time. But as a manager, this is your chance to make a difference to people, to yourself, to your organization. So we're going to be looking a little bit more in details at coaching and what we mean by continuous coaching. So a lot of organizations these days are turning into a coaching culture. And the reason for this is because they have realized that everything is evolving very quickly in the world that we live in. And today, you might have all the answers to all the questions regarding, your business, your sector, your industry. But because things change so quickly, you need to have teams of people that develop a way of thinking that's more agile, that will allow them to change more quickly. Okay, so that's where a coaching mindset comes into play. So the first tip I would say to you is look at your organization, look at what's on your SharePoint, on your share drive, and familiarize yourself with, what is your organization doing in terms of continuous coaching? How do they define continuous coaching? What kind of supports do they give you? What kind of courses are available and resources and so on? But if we look at continuous coaching, we need to have a certain mindset. And the mindset is your mindset as a manager, but also the mindset of the organizations you're working with. So when we talk about the mindset of continuous coaching, we always talk about open communication. Yeah, and we talk about open communication up and down and sideways as well, and across boundaries. So we're breaking the silos and we're listening, we're sharing information across the whole organization. And it's also about trusting people and trusting people to make smart decisions. So sometimes it's a little bit about letting go, letting go of our own old ways and accepting that people will genuinely do their best to make the best decision. It's all about asking questions all the time to help people grow and to come up with new ways of doing things and to develop new concepts. It's also about supporting, encouraging, not passing judgment, guiding people, getting out of the way. So that's the mindset of continuous coaching. And as I said before, the benefits are multifold. So with a coaching mindset, so for you as a manager, but also for an organization, it becomes easier to constantly adapt to changing work environments and to help your employees develop, grow, and deliver on the company's mission. Okay, so those are all the benefits of continuous coaching and the mindset that you need to develop. So most organizations these days, they adopt something called a situational coaching approach. Okay, so it's very interesting for you to think about coaching and situational coaching. Well, let's go back. I want you to think about you as a manager, you as a leader, but also you as an employee, and think about your manager and the management style. And when we talk about continuous coaching and we talk about situational coaching, which is what organizations tend to promote these days, there's several things we need to look at, okay? And the first style of coaching that tends to happen in most organization is called directive style, which means that in a business, someone might have a question, an employee will have a question or will have difficulties doing something, go to the manager, and the manager will give information. Say, oh, this is the problem, this is the way to solve it. You can do this, 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 and that. So you're actually giving a lot of information, a lot of direction. But in terms of engagement from the employee, you're not getting that much commitment and you're not getting that much engagement, okay? And a lot of managers, a lot of middle managers, because they have so much and so many activities to juggle on their plates on a day-to-day basis, when someone comes with a problem, it's an easy default to go to a directive style of coaching. Okay, sometimes it's appropriate. Yeah, if you, for instance, have a new team member who doesn't know much about the job or about certain processes, yes, you want to be a little bit more directive. You want to be more of a mentor. You want to adopt mentoring here, and that's okay. But if you tend to do it by default, then you're probably preventing your employees from developing to their full potential, and you're kind of hindering the company's growth as well. Yeah, so that's the first style. The second style is called non non-interfering style. So non-interfering style is a typical manager who doesn't interfere. Okay, so it's probably where you have a lot of managers who use the performance management system as the what? They have a discussion at the beginning of the year saying, okay, those are the objectives. Are you okay with that? A mid-year review, and they don't do much in between. There's not much communication. There's not much asking questions. There's not much going on. However, they follow, what the organization wants them to do, and they are stepping back. They're not actively looking at developing employees, asking questions, and so on. And again, it's okay sometimes. Maybe you have an individual who is working on a certain project and, you're getting out of the way to let them do what it is they do best. And that's fine. But if it's your approach to always get out of the way of people, then you're not helping the organization, or you're not helping your people. Then you have something else, which is called non-directive style. And the non-directive style is what we coaches do. It's all about asking questions, listening, not giving any opinion, and just asking more questions and understanding what goes on in the moment and letting people come with their own solutions. So it's very time consuming. You're not actually giving out, any direction, any kind of information, and you're letting people come to their own conclusion and their own judgments. And this is really good. However, again, sometimes it's really good, but sometimes it's useless. Okay, if you go back to the new starter who doesn't know how to do something, you can spend hours questioning him. He's still going to not know how to do that thing. So you need to be a bit more directive. Okay, so those are the three main styles, management approach or coaching approaches. What most organizations want is something called situational coaching, which is knowing when to use which of these three other methods. So you, as a manager, as a leader, you need to be aware of, every single one of your team member. You need to know them. You need to know where they struggle, where they're having difficulties. And you need to be able to think, okay, where is it that they stand? What is it that they need? Do they need a little bit of mentoring? Do they need me to be a bit more direct? Do they need me to stand out of their way at this very moment on this very specific project? Or do I need to ask them questions, listen, and not interfere, to help them find their own solutions? So when we talk about situational coaching, we're talking about directive, non-interfering, non-directive. When do I use those approach? When is it best suited? And with whom do I do this? Okay, and that's the beauty of coaching, and that's the beauty of situational coaching. It's got so many different layers. So often in organization, a lot of people are kind of, we want to do the manager coach, we want to help you develop your people, we want to help you grow, and you need to be doing coaching. So a lot of managers will actually go on some kind of a coaching skill course, and they will get, a coaching model, and they will get all the tools to do a coaching session. But realistically, when you're back into your job, especially if you're working in an operational environment where, you're working in a call center, you're working in customer service, you have a team, or otherwise you have a team of salespeople, pressurized environment, a remote team that are very, very big, fine, I've got all the theory, I know how to coach, I know which model to use, but when is it that I coach, Again, It depends on your organization. It depends what your organization wants you to do. And it also depends on how realistic is your situations. So I would say that most managers, what they're expected to do is to use situational coaching whenever it is that they can coach. So remember, coaching is about um, asking questions. It's about sometimes spending time, booking a session, spending time, and actually going through a model, a coaching model, to actually get the individual to think for themselves. And sometimes it's standing out of the way. And sometimes it's also about giving feedback. So when do I coach? All the time. You don't have to follow a model. You don't have to book a 45-minute, 1-hour conversation every single month with every single team member. That is not your role as a manager. But as a manager, your role is more to actually use the situational coaching approach and ask more questions, be more curious. Yeah. And a lot of people often ask, how do I coach? If I have the time, and if there is a team member who is struggling, how do I coach? That's when it's useful to have a coaching model. So a coaching model, for instance, here I'm going to talk about the GROW model, is just a way to help you structure a coaching discussion. And whether you use the GROW model, whether you use the ACC model or the coach model, it doesn't really matter. It's just a framework to give you some confidence whenever you're going to have a 30, 45 minutes conversation to help you structure your discussion. So let's talk about the GROW model very briefly, because you probably all know about the GROW model. It's probably the most common one used in businesses. A typical time when you would use the GROW model is if a team member is experiencing a problem, is facing a problem, and they need to look for solutions. So there's a challenge and they need to look for a solution, and you might not know what the answer is, and you want to stay out of the way. You want to help them come up with their own solutions. Yeah. So the first thing you're going to do, you're going to set up a one-to-one meeting. You're probably going to allow 30, 45 to 1 hour. And at the beginning of the meeting, all you're going to say is, we're going to have a coaching session, and tell me, what do you think the goal of this 1 hour together is going to be? So what do you want to leave with in an hour? What's the purpose of this conversation? Yeah, the purpose of the conversation is not to solve the problem, it's to leave with some key actions. So after 1 hour, when you leave, what do you want to leave with? That's the goal. And then the reality is simply ask them some questions about the situation. Yeah, so ask them some questions so you can paint the picture of what's going on. So it becomes very, very clear. And that's when you use all your WH questions. So what have you done? How is this? And how is that? And what worked, what didn't work, and so on. All your WH and how questions goes in here. So once you have a picture of the reality, you move on to the options. So moving forward, what could be some of the options? What could you do? What have you thought about? What haven't you thought about? What would people in this place do? And so on. And then finally, so some people say will, some people say way forward. So the idea here is, okay, you've given me all of those options. Concretely, what are you going to do? What are you going to do within a certain time frame? What's the thing that you think you should do? And that's going to, give us the goal of today's session. And how likely, on a scale of 1 to 10, are you likely to do this by the agreed time? And it's very important to check that last piece, because if someone tells you, well, yeah, I'm probably a 5, I'm going to do it. Yes, it's a 5. It probably means that they're not going to do it. Okay, so you might need to revisit and spend a bit of time there. If they give you an 8 and above, that's fine. So here you are. The GROW model is just what it is. It's a model to help you manage a coaching conversation. But remember, situational coaching is more about a mindset. It's more about asking questions. It's more about giving feedback. It's more about knowing when to stand out of the way of people, knowing when to be directive, and so on. So that's the key for a manager. And continuous coaching is just one part of what makes a learning organization. There's other practices within a learning organization that include things like co-development, action learning, team coaching, and so on. So you as a manager, you're just practicing continuous coaching. Yeah, so you're just rewarding, you're just asking questions, you're just having sometimes some sit down coaching conversations. And feedback is a very, very important part of this. Having conversational feedback sessions with people where you give some feedback, but you also seek feedback from others. And that's what I want to cover next. I want to give you a very, very simple tool for you to be confident in giving feedback to people. So when we talk about feedback, let's cover the basics. So the basics are feedback is always based on facts and behaviors. It's not based on hearsay. It's not based on opinions. And it's based on observable facts that happened recently, like this week. Don't give feedback to someone that, the feedback happened like a month ago and they can't remember. It needs to be fresh. And always own, as a manager, you need to own your feedback. Rather than, people have said, or they have said, or the team said. Own your feedback. You're the one delivering the feedback. You're the one owning the feedback. And a feedback conversation is always a discussion. At the end of the feedback, you always agree on the next step and you always offer support. And feedback, if you are giving constructive feedback, make sure you do it in private. And if you're doing positive feedback or praise, you can do it in public. However, some people do not like that. So always have that in mind. So when we tend to give feedback, a lot of the time we tend to think about a bad experience, the feedback sandwich, which is typically, can I have a word with you in the quiet room? And then we don't know how to start the conversation. So we might say something nice. Oh, you did that last week and that was great. So that's your first kind of slice of bread. And that's something nice to bring something not so nice. So the feeling is like, yeah, this is not really nice. I need you to change this because blah, blah, blah. And then we don't want to end it there. So we tend to do something nice at the end. So we put another kind of slice of bread there. Oh, and I saw you're working on this project and it's really good. And that's a typical sandwich, feedback sandwich. And this you need to ditch. This is really bad. This is not what organizations these days should do. There's other ways of doing a feedback sandwich in a more clever way. So what you want to do, you want to make feedback part of your routine. So remember, feedback is about, of course, things to change, but also positive reinforcement, praise, good stuff. And a lot of time we're very, very, very focused on, we noticed for some reason something that went wrong, but and we think we need to say something. But when something goes well, we tend not to say anything. So what's really important is to start, observing what's going on and observing all the good stuff. And doing feedback about this good stuff. So you need to have a very simple feedback model. And the one I'm giving you is this one. So very simple, we start with an example, which is concrete facts and behaviors. And then we look at, okay, so I've noticed, da 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 da, and the impact is, or the consequences this kind of behavior has on the team or on the project or on the situation or on a specific individual is this. So if it's constructive feedback, we need to change the behavior. If it's positive reinforcement, we need to continue with the behavior. So that's your feedback model. Example, impact, change, or continue. So a typical conversation, remember, feedback is a conversation. Feedback is not a manager saying, I observe this is the impact, this needs to change and it's going to change like this, and this is when we're reviewing it. This is not that. Conversationally, it goes like, hey, I want to talk about the meeting this morning and I just want to have your view on something. So how do you think the meeting went? What do you think happened? And have a discussion. Okay, so what I noticed is I noticed this, and that. What are your thoughts about that? Did you notice the same thing? Yeah. What do you think the consequences of this were? What do you think the impact was? Well, let me tell you, the impact is this, and that. So this needs to change. How are you going to change this moving forward? What can we agree on? And how do we review that? And how can I support you with the process? And that's your typical conversation, feedback conversation for constructive feedback. And the same ways goes if you're doing a conversation for positive feedback. So the way you would do it is, hey, I noticed this morning at the meeting, you did this, that was great, da, 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 the impact was that, why did you do this? How did you do that? And so on. Yeah, it's great. You need to continue doing this, well done, and so on. And the more you get into the habit of giving feedback like this, the more it becomes a two-way conversation, and it's then easier to do. But also the role of a manager is not only to give feedback, but it's also to seek feedback. Yeah. So it's important that you ask your team member to give you some feedback. And to be honest, they might be a little bit reluctant to do that. So I always find that a good way of asking for feedback is probably to send an email and say, hey, we're having a one-to-one meeting coming up on that day. I'd like you to give me some feedback about, how I am doing as your manager at the moment and my management style with you. So can you tell me, one thing that I do very well and that I should keep on doing, one thing that I should stop doing because it's not working within the relationship, and one thing I'm not currently doing that I should be doing with you that would make the relationship work better. And then you can discuss that at your next one-to-one meeting. Okay, so when we talk about continuous feedback, when we talk about the manager coach, when we talk about continuous coaching, we are talking about informal performance management. There's a hell of a lot of activities, there's a hell of a lot of conversations that need to happen, a lot of questioning that need to happen. So in summary, those are the things that we covered today. So we looked at the how of performance management, everything that's informal, everything that's not in your job description. We looked at continuous communication, through coaching, through feedback, through mentoring, for asking all your questions. We looked at the manager coach, the mindset, and situational coaching. And I gave you some ideas on how to give and receive feedback as well. So in the members area, I've loaded a lot of resources. There's a lot of worksheet about how to run one-to-one meeting, what content to put in there to make them efficient. Coaching skills, feedback skills, giving you examples, giving you a prep sheet, and all of those kind of things. Everything is free, everything is ready to download. So please, if you're working with me, go to the member site and just download everything and start working and sharing with your team. I hope you find this useful. So next month, we're going to be looking at appraisals, and end-of-year reviews, mid-year reviews. And that's it for me. So if you want to get in touch with me, you've got my details there. I'm also putting a toolkit together to go with the whole performance management series of webinars that we've done. So you'll be able to download all the worksheets associated with the webinars all in one place. I'm going to stop the recording now, and then if you have some questions, I'll be quite happy to take them. Thanks for coming today.